Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to share screen. So yeah, again, very similar to carrying on from Armin's messaging, and is to look at a specific customer, and here it's an Irish customer, and and again very much it's using the G Media toolkit. So the sorry, I lost my slide here. The it's how G Media and Image Station has been used in land and property services in Belfast for producing the national mapping in Northern Ireland. So we're going to talk about the whole photogrammetry. So for those who don't know, land and property services have a mapping division which would have previously been better known as Ordnance Survey Northern Ireland. And in the mapping, the mapping division is responsible for the production of the OSNI small-scale maps, which again is done using G Media, creating the large-scale map revision, creation and maintenance of the pointer address database, developing the Northern Ireland GI strategy, providing OSNI mapping and related data to public and private sectors, maintaining the national grid and geodetic and height network for Northern Ireland, and maintaining statutory boundaries and delineating these on mapping. So LPS went to market 2 years ago for a photogrammetry solution. So they were looking for a single platform for the processing of imagery from camera to large-scale database and national imagery. So they were looking for a solution that could provide aero triangulation, the creation of the digital elevation model, auto production, and then mono and stereo vector capture to update the Fusion large-scale database. So Fusion, for those customers in the south of Ireland, that's the LPS kind of equivalent to Prime. So updating the Fusion, which will be their large-scale database to create the vector data. Another big requirement of that system was integrating with LPS's existing one spatial job and workflow management solution to provide change-only updates into the Oracle database. So previously, LPS had a number of systems to fulfill this requirement. So they actually wanted to come up with one solution, one platform, and one provider. And we were able to bid a hexagon solution that met all those requirements. So the solution was made up of a number of components of the Image Station and G Media. So from the aero triangulation, taking the raw imagery from the flyover and triangulating that data to create the AT and the digital elevation file, to then using stereo to create the DTMs and DXF file as a DXF, to then doing the queuing that data and triangulating it, and then creating the first level auto photography and auto produced product. So again, when I started getting involved with national mapping agencies and using seeing how imagery is produced, and you just think the plane flies over the land and the image comes out of it, but of course it's a lot more complex than that. And being able to get the imagery and warp it together, because you may have one part of the country was captured and it was slightly brighter that day or slightly darker. You have different flying streams. You've also got different atmospheric issues during the day. Bringing all that together, correcting the data, make sure it's warped properly to the Irish grid or ITM, and producing a seamless auto product is a fairly complex process, and that's where Image Station handles that end-to-end production of the auto photography and the auto imagery. So with that, we were able to provide a number of components of the G Media and Image Station stack. So Image Station provides an automatic triangulation tool. It also has a DTM and stereo tools for the creating of the imagery and correcting of the imagery, and then we have the auto production products as well. And in LPS, a number of users would have the full G Media Professional. Some were using G Media Advantage and some G Media Essentials. We also use SQL Server Express just to store some metadata about how the draping of the imagery and work was done. The auto production itself was using Image Station Auto Pro, which was to take the imagery and then output TIFF, JPEG 2000, ECW, and also some tab for post-processing information. We then had to create the DTM. So again, taking the image, bringing it through, generating the elevations, and then outputting the terrain model as a DXF, outputting the ASCII, the XYZ, and the last file. So again, we used a combination of GMedia and Image Station, and as you'll see in a lot of our projects, we use FME then for this different data conversions, and in this case, for converting the data out to LAS format. So again, big thing for the image production guys in Belfast was having one desktop, one interface for all these products. While previously they may have had to jump from product to product, it became a one single solution. So then the stereo photogrammetric production was a lot of integration to do there. So we had to integrate with the LPS workflow management system, which would create the job, which would create the work for the person to do. Again, we used FME server to integrate there. It would then create the job, which was available in the GMedia system. They were able to download the piece of large-scale data that needed to be edited in that job to the local GMedia system, edit the information, and then provide the data back as GML, so as change-only GML, to FME, which then pushed the data into the Oracle database via the OneSpatial interface. So providing change-only information back, but also using FME in the photogrammetric desktop to validate the changes before they were posted. So the Fusion database, like the Prime2 database in the south, has an awful lot of business rules to make sure that the large-scale data is produced to a high enough level. So instead of us sending the data back to OneSpatial and then the data being bounced because it was wrong or hadn't followed the right geometric or attribute or business rules, we were able to build these rules in FME, call them rules from GMedia, and then push any errors that needed to be checked back into the GMedia workspace, so the editor there and then can make the changes without having to wait for the report to come back from the OneSpatial system. So again, really, really streamlining this, and also because of the power of FME to do some very complex queries and integrate and reporting, it was able to check all this data, both 3D and 2D, because again, the system is stereo and mono, so the users can see the data in stereo and mono view. Again, one desktop, being able to switch from stereo to mono using GMedia or Image Station with FME to provide that integration. So this was the big piece, was being able to provide these change-only updates to the OSNI Fusion system. So we were able to integrate with the workflow, bring the data down using FME server, and then send it back up, but not before it was checked to make sure the data was correct, that all the changes were correct, and then providing that change-only file back to the system. And it really, this is a great example of integrating a desktop GIS like GMedia with FME. And again, we talk about how that just expands what you can do with it, expands out the limitations of the desktop product. Marcus mentioned this morning, integrating with something like Xalt or FME, how that, you can then bring in more sensor information, bring in other data that maybe the desktop product wasn't able to do. In the case of the LPS project, we needed to drape the DTM, the features over the DTM and create the Z value. Again, we were able to automatically do that using FME, speeding up the workflow for the end user and what they were doing. So some of the customizations we did in GMedia, we now have the job management capabilities, so it integrates that you could open a job, see the jobs that have been assigned to you, bring the data down and work on those jobs inside GMedia. As I said, it then calls FME to do some very advanced validation using an FME workspace, but that validation is useless unless it actually passes back the errors in with the errors marked on the map so the person can correct them. So that could be where somebody has forgot to put the Z value on a new feature, or put the wrong Z value because it's a lamppost, so it should be above the ground, not below the ground. So having that capability is really, really important. And that's why we have inside GMedia now the ability to see these logs, to call FME server and get the information back, and then able to locate those errors on the map and then change them and fix them and resubmit the data. So I just want to show you the system now. If I play this video, so you can see here we can start up the LPS GMedia system. So you can see that I think this is GMedia 2018. It connects to the workspace. So it then picks up the full data model. You can see straight away there's no features loaded because there's no active jobs. So all the legend is got 0 records. So there's nothing in the legend. But you can see they can go to the workflow, open a job, and then pick the jobs that are assigned to that user. So they can see their different jobs. They can see the date, time, when they were created. They can pick a job, open it up, and now it loads up, takes the data from the master database just for the job area, just for the area that is required. So it hasn't downloaded the whole database. It has just downloaded the data that they want to work on. And you can see the legend is now populated and they can make changes. So inside the GMedia workspace, we then also have, again, as I mentioned before, the Fusion data model is fairly complex. So we have a customed data form, which allows you to change the form to see how you can see the attributes, but it also has drop-down lists and specific form ID values that can be used to make it easy for the user. So you can say in this case, when he's picking the type code, he's picking from drop-down lists. So that's using the GMedia form toolkit that we've built on, where you can configure these forms to read the database to auto-populate these fields without programming. So really easy to use. Again, ensures high-quality data because people aren't free texting in values. You can also see there it's picking up Polyani's user ID when she was creating the video, and also the change date is being automatically populated. So again, inside GMedia, we're actually able to add in all this information and make sure it's done correctly. So now we're going to use GMedia to insert some data. So we can write to the Photogrammetry database, pick the feature. So in this case, it'll be a structure, I think, and we can then draw on the map the feature. So we can capture in, and this data is then provided into the database. And of course, we're using, the desktop product here to integrate nicely with this workflow and capture the geometry and things, and use FME server then to integrate the data. This also could be the same work could be done inside Map Enterprise, as Marcus has shown this morning, connecting to a third-party job management, bringing the information in, and then using external tools to validate the information. So you can see here we've created our polygon, and now we have to populate the attributes. So the data gets created, and we're going to create another one. Let me see how my video is doing here. Yeah. And you can see here as well, we can delete a feature. So I think it didn't quite pick up in the video there, but yeah, we can read it. So we've done a deletion, we've done an insertion. We run the validate job now. So now it's calling FME, and it comes back and says so actually as well, we track all the changes that were done during the process. So it says there was a feature inserted, there was 2 features, one updated and one deleted. We can then run the validation, and it'll find any errors that we have in our report. And so here it says, well, one business rule was not populated, so we didn't populate some of the attributes. And you can see now it's dropped that little point marker on the map to show that this data is wrong and needs to be validated. So now you can open the polygon, and then if you populate the attribute. I'm not sure I'm getting echo. Yeah, we can populate the attributes. Then we're able to then do the system, fill it in properly, and then when we go to post again in a second, let me just speed this up because we're getting a bit short for time. We can then rerun the update, fill in the data, make any other changes we want to make. And this time you can see we've made more changes, and you can see again we're getting the other errors that we might get, and you can see the nice little icons we have when there's warnings or errors on a feature insert. if it's not a good error. So in this case, the Z order is wrong or the size is too small, and we get extra errors showing up on the map when we make those kind of changes. And then again, we can fix these issues and come back. So once they're fixed, then the data will be is able to be posted back to the system. And the log is created. And then it creates those change files, which are in a zip file, which FME will then send back to the server, and automatically that gets loaded up through the workflow management into the one spatial database. So it's a great example of how we can extend the power of GMedia to take into account, really complex workflows. And of course, the one value there is we now have all that validation in FME. So again, if LPS wanted to, they could use that workspace with their mobile workflows, with other applications, all going through one single source of validation, whether it's desktop, web, or mobile. So really, really useful platform. Sorry, that should be moving on. So just keeping on time. In summary, OSNI and the mapping division, they wanted the Hexagon Geospatial provided a complete photogrammetric platform from sensor to database, and GMedia Image Station was the ideal solution for large-scale stereo and mono editing of vector data. So again, they were able to go from having a number of products. Actually, on the stereo capture, I think they had 2 systems. So they used to do the stereo capture on one piece of software and then went into another piece of software to do the attribution. So the guys had to have 2 workstations or 2 desktops and jump from one to the other to do the job. Now they can do it all through one single screen. And that's my session on the photogrammetry and LPS.